Assalamu alaikum viewers, and welcome to our program Economic Challenges Facing Pakistan. And as part of the series, I'm very happy to have with us Mr. Aezaz Hussain, who is the chairman of Systems Limited, which is one of the pioneers in the field of information and communication technology, or the IT, digital economy sector, the software sector. And we are going to really discuss where we are, how did we get there, and why is it that Pakistan has not been able to capture a sufficient enough share either of the global markets or play a more significant role in the domestic market. Mr. Aezaz Hussain is a graduate from Birmingham, and he's the founding father, as I said, of Systems. So welcome, Aezaz. And Aezaz, let me start by just sort of first asking you, since you were one of the earlier pioneers in the late 70s, how did the IT sectors take root in Pakistan, and where is it today?
Thank you, Rashid. It's always a pleasure to come back to LSE. It's such a great environment to be in and talking to people here. Well, the IT sector in Pakistan started almost parallel to the Indian sector, maybe a couple of years later. But the enabling environment, which was already created in India when the IT sector started there, took a much, much longer path to be created here in Pakistan. So if I look at the history of the IT industry in Pakistan and the whole sector and its enabling environment, I would say that we've had a very checkered past. We've caught up. We have a good current state, and hopefully one can look forward to a bright future. But the only thing which held us back, other than the size of the two economies, is that the enabling environment, in which the IT sector basically flourishes, took a longer time to develop here. I'll give you an example. When we set up Systems Limited back in 1978, there was no LSE, there was no LUMS, there was no FAST, there was no National University of Science and Technology in Islamabad. There was nobody producing a computer science graduate. So any person that we had to create, we had to almost create in-house. We would take engineers or economists or accountants, and we give them an aptitude test to find out if they were trainable. And we would train them from the basics of computing to learning a language and then working from there onwards. So that was the enabling environment that we worked in. It took from then, 77 to now, 30 years later, that we have for the first time venture capital in Pakistan, which is the actual engine of growth of an innovative industry, because banks can't fund it. Systems Limited, with all its very profitable and long-standing past, even today is not capable of getting debt from a bank, because we don't have the kind of traditional collateral which the banks lend against. So that enabling environment is catching up. I think what has caught up and what has put us perhaps ahead of a lot of our regional thing is the communication infrastructure has really been developed very well, and that will allow us to leapfrog a lot of years that we missed in the past.
Yeah, I think you said it very correctly that India was able to take advantage of its early investment in higher education and science and technology.
Absolutely.
And whereas in the early 50s and 60s, a lot of people would say that all the engineers they produced from all these IITs were just basically unemployed. When this new industry came in, which was the new revolution of ICT, which basically, like you rightly said, is not capital intensive in the traditional sense, but basically knowledge and people oriented.
Very dependent.
Very dependent. So all the electronic engineers and all these scientists, Bangalore and other people were able to tap away, starting from scratch. Now the question really is, you're right, it's taken longer, but 30 years is a long time. In the sense that even today, as I say many times, you see mobile phones everywhere, but you don't see any productivity growth in the economy. You see a lot of talk about ICT and IT sectors and incubators, and like you said, big foreign firms are coming in, and there are big firms like yours, but they're still very few.
Very few.
And the share, which nobody quite knows, but where there are various estimates, either from your organization called Pasha, which is your in-house.
It's our association of all the IT companies.
Association of
represents the IT industry.
IT industry, or what you can get from the software. I think they have an institute in the Ministry of IT, etc. But the statistics seem to suggest that the total size of the IT sector is about between 2.6 to 2.8 billion dollars, which is about 1% of the Pakistan GDP. And if you take our total exports, they are about 1.4, which might be an underestimate, because a lot of this money comes through body shopping, and money remittances coming back might also have it, but still relative to India, which is $80 billion. Now, in terms of where we are today and where we can be 10 years on, I mean, I've been hearing this for a long time. I remember when President, what was his name, Laghari was very, very keen on it, and they were hoping
very supportive of this investment.
Very supportive of this investment, and they will leap and bounds. What makes you more optimistic today, let's say, than you would have been 10 years earlier?
Well, what makes me optimistic is the supporting environment now exists. On the other hand, we tend to compare everything with India. We missed the bus as far as the export of services is concerned, and it takes a lot to catch up. And then 9/11 happened, which meant that we were totally out of the export. But contribution of the IT sector must not be seen purely as a basis of earning foreign exchange or as an export. There's some very, very strong impact of the IT sector in the economy. We all know, it's an established fact now, that innovation is an engine of economic growth. They have now been able to do their studies, which I can share with you, where they have used measurable proxies like patents and R&D expenditure, etc., to actual GDP growth. And economies which have that tend to have a much higher growth. And innovation, IT plays a very major role in innovation. If I take technology as a means of being able to take an input and convert it into a desired output as productively as possible, by nature this activity is a part of the whole economic growth engine. I'll give you a small example of economic activity. The other day I met this young lady who had come up with a new cosmetic, or a range of cosmetics based on natural stuff. And 10 years ago, it would have probably, she would have had to spend tens of crores to set up the brick and mortar retail setup required to reach the level of sales that she had. In a year, she was doing over 20 crores of sales. And she could do it because of using IT and e-commerce effectively. And the fact that this infrastructure existed in Pakistan She could put up a site, she could spend a little bit of money on Google to be able to draw traffic to her site. She could have a payment mechanism on it, and she could ship things off. Now this is being done in tens of millions as far as apparel is concerned within this domestic market and also export, which would not have been possible. So the contribution, I'm talking of a very sort of a new thing in which this is the digital economy is contributing, but the contribution in overall labor productivity in major industrial sectors of our economy is very dependent on IT, and that continues to be done. Yes, we have not had the level of success in export as we thought that we should have, but don't forget, we were catching up, and then 9/11.
So we got a very hostile
9/11 threw us out of the
hostile investment climate, at least from the point of view.
Absolutely.
And I remember you always said that, if you can change the, from the State Department, the travel advisory.
We could have done wonders.
And, it means having to pay much more insurance, equipment, people, etc. Now, coming back to your point about first the industry itself, and the way this industry develops, and more importantly, the way this industry operates. One of its features is that basically it's one where science and technology and human capital merge with each other. And there is this new phrase which I call you by also in some sense, a technopreneur. So technology and the entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
And I would say that perhaps you are an example of that technology and entrepreneurs. So this technopreneur which is taking place, do you see sort of green sort of roots taking place in Pakistan? Do you see it coming on? When you see around yourselves, do you see this sprouting of people coming up, the new techno-entrepreneurs?
I see a lot of techno-entrepreneurs. This is a numbers game. You've got to have thousands of them for a few hundred to succeed. But then, given that this technology, like any technology, is no longer now can be kept within geographic boundaries or political boundaries. I've met, I have mentored, I would like to invest in some. I've met techno-entrepreneurs who are not even addressing the market. And the fact is that they can sit in Lahore and address the international market for their technology. I'm just hoping that they will bring the revenue of that back here, but they're not even necessary for them to do that. But they are from this economy. They are a creation of the knowledge in this country. They are a creation of the infrastructure which is beginning to develop here. Some of them have been funded by international venture funding. Some are now with the first angel funds, or the first venture fund, I believe, is in the process of registering itself, will be the product of, or will be funded by organizations here. But to them, the whole market, the whole world is a market. And like we are a market to techno-entrepreneurs from everywhere else in the world. Like Uber is very active in Pakistan, investing a lot of money in here. Pure technology company. They see the opportunity here and they can come and operate here.
Now the second thing which you said rightly was, one is of course the industry itself and its size and its exports. The other of course is that we now live in a knowledge economy, like you said. It's no longer physical capital or labor which drives, and it's not just labor productivity or capital productivity, but what we call total factor productivity, which is supposed to be what captures, which you cannot capture by just looking at inputs of capital and increases in labor. But in Pakistan, although we see it happening, total factor productivity's growth rates have been much lower than, for example, if you look at the East Asian economies, etc., and you looked at their productivity growth, 60 to 70% was taking place through sort of total factor, knowledge, new technology, new innovation. And India has managed to maintain that, especially in the service sector. But somehow or the other in Pakistan, now either the statistics are not picking it up sufficiently, but we do not seem to be able to get that kind of productivity growth. My question to you really is, because I know earlier on selling your products was a great challenge, is the Pakistani businessman far too conservative, the entrepreneur too conservative, family membership, secrets and things like that, they are not opening, or you think they are now slowly overcoming that kind of barriers?
No, I think they're not conservative. I think we didn't have a productive enough technology 10 years ago. It cost them, because it's in relative terms. The cost of delivering the technology in Lahore was the same as delivering it anywhere else. And the other costs of business were far lower. So the amount that they needed to invest was relatively higher. Today, with the technology having improved so much and the cost of implementing technology having gone down, a lot of the local businesses are implementing it. But I think on the other side, there's a lot of technology being used in the undocumented sector. I am really